Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 3rd of October. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. Going to give you the broad themes to look out for, but please stay with me. I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs to give you in much greater detail the key influences for each. Now this week sees Pluto end its retrograde, which began on the 29th of April. Pluto is also going to be linking with Mercury, the planet of communication, now travelling forwards and gaining traction in the sign of Virgo. And that's very much about clarity and precision. And the combination of these two can, if we choose to embrace their joint power, can help us to probe, to research, and to get really clear about some important strands in our situations. The problem is that Mars in the bright and bubbly Gemini is in a right angle with Neptune. And Neptune in the 12th solar house for us all, in a square with Mars in the 3rd, suggests that some of our desires can come from the subconscious, but also we may read or hear things. People may even indulge in gossip with this particular aspect, and that can then inform some of our other actions. And Mars, of course, is very much about desire. So that combination between Mercury and Pluto gives us a chance to try to make sense of some of the confusing energies that could be washing around. I mean, one of the things that could happen with Mars squaring Neptune, which goes on for the whole of October and the whole of November within 3 degrees, is that we can lose power. Our physical vitality is lower, and our thinking around our clarity can be blunted because, of course, like Virgo, Gemini is ruled where Mars is by Mercury, the planet of communication. So there is a real contraflow energy going on between these two sets of influences. Also, of course, Saturn and Uranus, which were so prominent in 2021 and at the start of 2022, are within 1 minute of being exactly square all through this week. So that in itself is something we need to really be conscious of. Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which is very much about land. It can be about food. It can be even about fashion, but obviously very much about daily money and our budgets. That's being challenged by Saturn in the sign of the collective, the sign of Aquarius. So we're all feeling the pinch. There are a lot of headwinds around the cost of living. Some of them, of course, are coming about because of mismanagement by governments. It's not all to do with what we're doing as consumers. There are decisions that have been made which aren't necessarily for most of our benefit. And of course, the war in Ukraine is also having an impact too. But that particular aspect, the one thing about it is that we've had a lot of practice to deal with it. But it will play out in each of the zodiac signs in its own way. And I will share about each of those in much greater detail. Now, towards the end of this week, the Sun starts to go into a really fantastic grand air trine between Saturn, which it's very close to being in trine with, and a bit broader with Mars. And that gives us an opportunity to use the expressive and air energies of each of those planets where they're located, in Gemini, in the Sun in Libra, and of course Saturn in Aquarius, to use the air energy of each of those in a really productive way. And on Sunday there is the full moon in the sign of Aries, and it is going to be in opposition with the Sun, which is pretty much in close contact with Venus, which governs the sign of Libra. Now, if you'd like to know much more about this particular full moon, please see below and you can check out my deep dive special video. But essentially, I think that Venus softens some of the potential tension that this full moon can create each year. But I think the Aries full moon is asking us to think about what we want as individuals. And the moon in Aries can be very immediate. It's not very considered. It's quite an urgent energy. Whereas the Sun and Venus close together in Libra are asking us to think about how we interact with others, how we balance things, how we disseminate information, how we embrace fairness, because those are very Libran energies. But I think the worst of this particular full moon is mitigated somewhat by Venus, but the wider influences at play on this particular event are quite challenging. And of course, one of those is Mars squaring with Neptune. So please join me for that deep dive. But if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and understand what year 2023 will hold for you personally, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can give you your forecast for 23, but you'll get the rest of year 2022 free. Plus you'll get your roadmap, your character analysis, which can guide you for the rest of your life and help you to seize opportunities, but also understand more some of the patterns that may have developed in your life, which are not so easy. And there's 30% off with my special package. Please see the link below. Finally, if you are new to my channel, I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And if you're an ongoing viewer, thank you so much for joining me. So Taurus, your week commencing the 3rd of October forecast suggests that you need to perhaps over the next couple of months really be very conscious of a sense of feeling quite trapped or limited or penned in terms of your personal options. And yet there could be some rather attractive possibilities that are calling out for your attention. But some of these, whether in a romantic, a friendship perspective, or even speculatively, might not turn out to be quite as good as you could hope them to be. So just at the point when things feel quite stuck, options could come up, but just proceed with care. Because I'm not saying that if you collaborate with a group of people or one particular person, it can't work for you, but you definitely need to do your research and just be aware that with the trickster planet, Neptune, in the mix, linking with the planet of desire, Mars, in your second house, then that in itself could see you want something or yearn for something or get caught up in something that will just end up being a load of mischief. Fortunately, Mercury is gaining traction in your sister Earth sign of Virgo, linking brilliantly with Pluto this week, and that does give you the opportunity to think carefully, to weigh up your options before moving forwards. I also think that Saturn's link with the Sun towards the end of this week can also be very good for you in terms of work options. It can make you really be quite realistic about some of the changes you can make. Now, the link with Uranus in your sign is definitely much more difficult, because if you're working in an environment where you don't gain a great amount of pleasure, you don't get any recognition, there's not much encouragement, the desire to change things can be strong. And you could change things, but I think it needs to come from a very solid base. Now, the full moon, which occurs towards the end of this week, is in your 12th house, where you also have Chiron and the retreating Jupiter. Because Neptune is impacting on Mars this week, and Jupiter also influences Pisces, they're, along with Neptune, the two co-regents, your psychological well-being is something to really be mindful of, to use that rather often used phrase at the moment. But it is true, towards the end of this week, you could feel a little bit drained. And I just think that if it does seem to close in on you, just give yourself permission to rest, to recharge. That this isn't necessarily a time towards the end of this week to make massive steps forwards in terms of big moves. It's more time to just consider your options. Also, balancing our physical demands, the material world, with the more emotional, spiritual and psychological realm is something that you can really grapple with as this week draws to a close. But I think trust, sincerity and honesty are characteristics that can be sadly lacking in modern life. So proceed with an awful amount of care and just be aware that there may be things that seem very tempting, but they may not actually be the right option for you.